This is the second of 5 Sundays that we hear from chapter 6 of John's Gospel. At the end of last week's Gospel text, the story of the remarkable feeding of the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish, John told us that Jesus suspected that the crowd would come and try to make him king, and he fled to the mountain by himself. And now, several verses later, John tells us that the crowd set out to find him. They got into boats. Not sure how they were going to get up the mountain in boats. I think John's geography is not quite as profound as his theology. Nonetheless, it must have been quite a scene, with a crowd of 5,000 getting into boats. In any case, they found him at the other side of the sea in the village of Capernaum, a name which means house of bread. Today's conversation takes us a little deeper into what we understand or what we mean to hunger for something beyond bread that perishes, what it means to have someone who feeds us, and what it means to be fed and never be hungry again. Seems a little heavy for a hot summer day, but this is John's Gospel, and he doesn't let us off very easily. John portrays the crowd as being interested in how Jesus got to the other side of the sea. But Jesus, John tells us, reads their minds and detects that they are seeking yet another amazing event on his part, something that they can watch, something that he will do for them. After all, they say, look what God did for our ancestors in the desert. What can you do? There's something wonderful and kind of refreshing about their curiosity, even if it might seem to us a little naive. Nonetheless, we identify with the folks in the crowd. Wouldn't you or I follow someone who fed 5,000 with a few loaves and a few fish? I think so. And wouldn't we be sort of a little bit interested in what the next event might be? It's part of our spiritual consciousness as disciples to wonder what Jesus is up to. That's why we're here. We come because we're seeking some kind of encounter with the risen Lord. We come because we have a spiritual curiosity, because we're imagining, we're wondering, we're trying to go one step further. And there's always something dangerous about that. Jesus wants more of his disciples. He wants them to see beyond the obvious. He wants to adjust their lens, if you like, their perspective. He wants to adjust their consciousness. He wants them to have the same fierce curiosity and interest in a spiritual hunger. Jesus admits that they can work for food that perishes, but he wants them and us to work for a daily bread that is the work of God. The manna for the Israelites didn't come from Moses, Jesus reminds them, but from God. It wasn't just to keep them from starving, and it obviously didn't keep them from grumbling, but it was to remind them that God takes care of them, even when, and especially when, they grumble and threaten to give up their trust. The 5 loaves and the 2 fish were more than just a great picnic for 5,000. They too were signs that God was taking care, and that through Jesus, God would and could satisfy a deeper hunger, a hunger for the very meaning of life itself. And this sign was and is an amazing gift. It's not a cheap show of divine power. When God offers such a sign, we are invited to respond not by watching, but by doing the very works that Jesus did, the works of forgiveness and compassion, of justice, and of unconditional love. Here at this table, that same remarkable, amazing, mysterious event takes place, just as it did for the Israelites and for the crowd so long ago. As a community of many, we share a single desire: to be fed by God through the life of Jesus Christ in his body and blood. It is here that we are in communion with God, in the risen Lord, and in communion with each other in that same God. Here we are in the presence of our God, of the one for whom no hunger, no thirst, no justice, and no inequality cannot and will not be redeemed. Those are the miracles that we look for this day. And the dangerous part of seeking to be in the presence of this God is that we are asked to make God's work our work. If I could paraphrase the words of Moses in today's first reading, the words that are repeated in the Gospel, and Moses said when the people asked, "What is this?" And Moses said, "This is the bread the Lord has given you to eat." I would say, this is the bread the Lord has given you to be.